Hey guys, it's Justin, your guide into the other side. I know you may be asking the question, how do I even get started with Otherside? How do I figure out what's good, what's bad, what makes a good Otherdeed? And today I got you covered this video. So I want to bring your attention to UnsungCrypto's infographic that he made. He's actually the head of the Geared Ape Guild, and he has a lot of Otherdeeds, and he's definitely a wealth of knowledge that should be utilized, especially if you want to know anything about Otherside. So you can actually find his Discord. I'll probably link it in the description if I can, but I don't know if YouTube will allow me to do that. But anyways, let's just kind of jump right in. This is not financial advice. This is just kind of a gameplay analysis, but it's just kind of a guide on how to pick your first Otherdeed. So let's jump right in. So first of all, I'm going to open this image in a new tab because it's not necessarily that easy to read. So just to get started, evaluating an Otherdeed is difficult. So there's a lot of things to consider. You know, we have limited and incomplete information of the game mechanics behind Otherside. So this is going to cover everything. There's always going to be new stuff being added to the game. This is just like this is Geared Ape's personal views and thought processes with evaluating an Otherdeed, right? So here we have the 5 most important traits that can influence the potential value of an Otherdeed. And, you know, if we go through the 5 things, it's sediment type and tier, environment size, artifacts, resources, and Kodas. So on this side, I have the Otherside Wiki because this is probably like the best website that you could use when looking for anything related to Otherside. It has a lot of knowledge, has a lot of information, and this is the information that's referenced in this guide. So, you know, I'm just going to get started. The first thing is the sediment type and tier. So the metaverse in Otherside is built on 5 distinct types of land sediments, right? And each is available in 3 different tiers with varying levels of rarity and value. So if we click on Discover Otherside, we can kind of see, hey, there's a sediment here. And we can kind of see all the sediments: biogenic swamp, chemical goo, cosmic dream, infinite expanse, rainbow atmos, and we can kind of see, hey, there are the tiers here as well. So tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, you can see the rarity and the quantity that exists inside of Otherside. So we can see tier 1, 4,900, and then tier 3, up to tier 3, it's about 2,000. So obviously as the tier increases, it becomes more rare because the sediment tier dictates how fast your farmer can mine fragments, but we'll get into that a little bit later. So the second thing we want to take a look at is the environment type and size. So we can find this on the Otherside Wiki by clicking on environments. This shows us basically everything. There's 8 distinct categories of environments: decay, harsh, spirit, so on and so forth. There's a bunch of them that you can take a look through here. I know I covered them in previous videos, with each having 4 sub-environments except for chaos, and each sub-environment is available in 5 different tiers. So if we click on bog, we can kind of see, hey, there are 5 different tiers. This dictates how big it is in the other side, you know, in the 3D version, and how many workers you can allocate towards it in Legends of the Tomorrow, right? So it determines your bandwidth. And I'll cover that a little bit later. So the next thing is artifacts. So an Otherdeed may contain an artifact, so it's basically 74 items that can have special abilities or characteristics. Some can be crafted, some cannot. So if we click on artifacts, you know, sort by rarity, we can kind of see everything in terms of, you know, the rarity. So obviously, Sword of Chaos, you know, Archway Keystone, Archway Keystone, Blade of Eternium. There's only one of these in the other side, you know, with a lot of these only have one. So obviously, I don't think those are going to be able to be crafted. That makes a lot of sense. But, you know, stuff, you know, more common items like, you know, rugged pickaxe, you know, rugged axe, rugged shovel, rugged hammer, you know, stuff like that. That's probably more akin to be craftable in the game. You know, forged pickaxe, forged shovel, forged axe, you know, that kind of implies a forge or needing some upgraded type of hardware to create them. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I mean, there's a variety of artifacts that you can take a look at that may impact the price of your Otherdeed. But again, you know, the next thing is actually resources, right? So each Otherdeed can contain up to 4 resources located in the northeast west regions of the plot and are assigned a tier from 1 to 3, right? So if we actually sort this by rarity, you know, I'll just go to one of the common items. Let's just say petrified. And we can kind of see, hey, this has the tier of the resource. You know, this may or may not be on your Otherdeed depending on what is available on market. You know, just like sediment type, you know, the higher the tier, I would assume, we don't know this for sure, that the higher the tier, if you allocate a farmer towards it, the faster or more efficient you'll probably be able to mine that particular resource. So, you know, petrified, if it's got a tier 3, it makes sense that if you have a tier 3, it's probably more valuable because you can get more of it in a shorter period of time. So Again, these are going to be useful for crafting, specific items in the game. I probably will cover like, I guess I should probably cover the ODK here. But yeah, and I'll cover that later. So again, the fifth thing is actually Kodas, right? So, Kodas are celestial beings that reside on the other side. About the Kodas' origins and culture, little is known, but their magic and science keep Otherside thriving, right? So Kodas, in the particular, I guess in the context of Rec League, Kodas are important because they seem like they're becoming the avatar or champion of Otherside, right? They seem to be like the main characters in the game, outside of, Kodamara's, excuse me, and stuff like that. So, I mean, in the context of Rec League, they got a free mint. In the future, I wouldn't be surprised if Kodas are holding any of these NFT champions or, particular collections will confer specific benefits for mints, other collaborations between Yuga partners and Yugaverses and stuff like that. So I would keep an eye out for that, especially in the context of like Forgotten Universe with their wizards, Meebits with, the Meebits universe, World of Women, maybe they have something coming along. But I know that was something that was announced today was actually Serum City with Mutant Hounds. And I know in my previous video I covered that. So definitely take a look at that if you're interested in Serum City or the Mutant Hounds or getting a Battle Alliance as well. So outside of that, that's just kind of the 5 most important Otherdeed traits that you can probably take a look through with regards to Otherside. But let's actually move on to the next section of the guide, right? So with regards to resources here, we can kind of see he's geared, or UnsungCrypto has actually organized the resources by rarity, right? So the most rare resources are dimensional, Fragmentia, Stonecrop, Galactica, and I'll actually pivot to the resources on Otherside Wiki as well, and I'll sort by rarity. So you can see there's a higher resolution here. You can see they're more rare. So with regards to that, if we scroll down, the 16 resources of the root and shard category are considered common resources. So that pertains to these 2 categories. We can see, hey, there's only these. There's not that much variety, but they're common across Otherside, right? There's almost 11,000 nodes throughout the 100,000 Otherdeeds, right? There's about 10,000, 10,000, 11,000, 11,000, with the only rare ones inside of the root and shard category being Omni in the shard and Void in root. So, those ones are more probably going to fetch a premium. Whereas, Anima or Ore, these are more rare. There's only like 100 to about 700 of these particular resources, and they are environment specific. So each environment has 2 exclusive resources which may or may not appear in the deed that you decide to pick up. So it is important to keep an eye out for those, and you can always take a look and filter for those traits on like OpenSea or like Otherside Wiki and see what the prices would be for those. So if we look at the resource tier, we can see resource tiers can be found in the Otherdeed NFT stats. So if I actually pull up Luminite, so I'll pull that up here. Rarity, you can use the search bar and type in Luminite. Should pull up Luminite. Here we go. So we can see the tier. We can see where it's located. This is an exclusive to the crystal environment, and we can kind of see, hey, this kind of shows the last sales of Luminite. They're only on crystals. The last sale was 6 days ago for 0.75 ETH. And then we can see, you can kind of get a gauge for how expensive it's going to be if you're targeting a specific resource. And obviously this is going to be important in the future when we figure out what crafting will do and et cetera, what's useful for what. But we can kind of see, hey, these are the lowest listings currently. So, the lowest listing for a crystal to accumulate that or get that is a tier 2 Luminite for about 1.1 ETH. So that's just kind of where you can find it. There's not that many listed because it's a very scarce resource at only 292 available in the other side, right? So again, resources will be renewable and harvestable and will be used to craft buildings and in-game items. So rare resources will provide higher or special imbuing properties during crafting. So I want to touch on that briefly by taking a look at the Otherside Litepaper under the authoring and manufacturing processes section under the Otherside Development Kit. So this is a critical piece of knowledge to keep in mind because it reminds me a lot of Minecraft. There's a template, there's resources. You need a template and resources basically to manufacture items. And what's important to us as gamers to take a look at is the section 3 and section 4. So resourcing, All objects require resources to be manufactured. Resources can be found on plots, traded for, or earned through play. And traded for me it refers to the agora portion of the obelisk, and that's to be rolled out after people set up the economy, they farm, they play season 1 of Legends of Tomorrow. I'm not necessarily sure when the agora marketplace is going to be dropped, but we'll see. Or earned through play. This is a really critical portion of the gameplay loop. So, we know that we can get resources by farming. That's obvious. We know that we can trade for it. That's obvious. But a really important piece is earned through play. That game loop design is fighting the Shattered, which is why I like to touch on fighting the Shattered is probably going to have 3 kinds of loot drops, essentially. Especially with what we saw in the gaming, the alpha gaming footage, or the screenshot, essentially. I think those 3 things are going to be resources earned through play. So resources can be earned through play. That's a speculation, but it's a strong speculation on my part. The faster you fight Shattered, the higher the resource rarity will likely be, or maybe it's delegated by what environment you're on. So again, there could be a pool of resources that can draw from any specific environment, but that's yet to be seen. So the first thing is resources. The second thing that that was also alluded to was the seasonal catalysts, right? So seasonal catalysts are used to evolve your Mara into Koda Mara, and we weren't necessarily told where we were to get these, but in my opinion, that it kind of seems obvious that it would come from fighting the Shattered. And then the third thing that we were told is unearthed artifacts, right? So all the artifacts. I don't know which artifacts in particular, but yeah, we'll probably get 3 things when we fight the Shatter, right? Resources, seasonal catalysts, which may be hybrid or not. We'll see. Obviously, the highest ones will be hybrid, and then thirdly, the unearthed artifacts. So. Again, so back to manufacturing, the bigger or more complex an object is, the more resources will be needed to manufacture it, right? So that pertains to base building, that pertains to building, your home or whatever you want to build in Otherside. So we don't necessarily know too much about that, so I can't comment on that as much. But what's really interesting to me is actually imbuing, right? So some type of objects may optionally be imbued with special properties by imbuing resources as part of the manufacturing process, right? So this gives a chance for each object to get a special random property as it is manufactured, right? So the manufacturing process kind of reminds me of the enchantment table in Minecraft. So I'm not necessarily sure if there's going to be magical resource properties or, stuff that's pertaining to, your weapons or, crafting weapons or enchanting them or enchanting your armor or clothing that Kodas may or may not have. We have seen examples of Kodas with armors. Or Kodas with specific, resource-related weapons. I saw a brimstone sword, so I was like, that has to be dealing fire damage, right? Right? So, that's yet to be seen. It's going to be interesting. So again, a piece of information you want to read is, the better the resource used for imbuing, the better the potential special properties, right? So that's why I think a lot of people are aiming to get a lot of these higher the higher rare resources, because the higher rare resources will be critical to getting those special, more powerful effects. And we don't necessarily know. And since, there's only 100 to, maybe 1,000 at maybe 750 at maximum for these rare resources. Yeah, the highest, the most rare, the least rare resource caps out about 772. So the the supply, the amount that's mined of the higher resources, that rate's going to be much lower than, the supply of the common resources, right? So obviously these things are going to have better actions and impact in the game as time goes along, right? And that's gonna shape the meta. That's gonna shape who's, what's good, what's bad, what's I guess the most efficient way to fight the Shattered, right? But everything's all up. It's all in development, and I'm sure a lot of things will change and evolve as the meta gets tested, right? So if we come back to the resource tier, I think that covers everything there. So we'll actually move on to the next part, which is the environment size and type, right? So environments are basically sectioned up into 8 sections, with the exception of chaos. And there's 2 exclusive resources. I already covered that. Okay. But yeah, resource tier. So again, this may not impact your purchasing decision as much, but the size of your Otherdeed is going to be dictated by the tier, right? So in the second season of the second trip, we saw a tier 3 land. I think it was a bone. It was a bone land. It was pretty big, right? It was pretty big. And then I think in the first trip and the Bored Ape Yacht Club land, that's a tier 5. That was massive, right? So that was a pretty big land. So I would say, regardless of the size, I mean, you're gonna have a pretty good cozy piece of Otherside to develop in whatever way that you choose, right? So outside of just how big it is in the 3D game, inside of Legends of the Mara, the tier of your land will dictate how many workers you'll be able to use on that environment, right? So tier 1 to tier 1 will have 1 worker, tier 5 will have 5, you know, so on and so forth. Enchanters don't apply for that particular restriction, and I know battle allies will have a defined amount of slots later, so I won't cover that. But basically, the higher the tier, the larger the physical land will be. Okay, I already covered that. This will be valuable as larger lands will provide more space for landowners to create experiences for visitors, etc., etc. So again, let me see. So I mean, yeah, the higher the slot, the more valuable it is, because you can accommodate more workers at a time. So if you're a resource baron, you know, obviously the bigger the land, the more bandwidth that you'll have in order to farm your resources that you so choose. So basically, you know, if you add a enchanter, you can also, I guess, provide buffs for another deed. So if you want to increase your efficiency with regards to farming, you can do that. But if you're also doing something like fighting the Shattered, enchanters can also buff you in that way too. So, on to the last part. The only difference we know concretely is that differing environments have different and unique appearances. If we actually click on environments, you know, they all look very different. And then the value is difficult to quantify, but I mean, on first look, you can kind of determine which ones are going to be, you know, higher value than others, because, I mean, first of all, a lot of people like shiny sparkling things, myself included. Crystal lands look amazing. Luster lands look amazing. I know you already know what I like in terms. I know I had my my tier rankings for environments aesthetically, but I mean, I'm super inclined, and I know a lot of people are inclined for specific biomes like biolume, sands, you know, islands, stuff that's pretty iconic. But stuff that's more common, I guess, say like bog or maybe steppes or even bone or glacier. I mean, the less liked lands, you know, you could probably find a better deal on market. So keep that in mind too. So if you don't necessarily care too much about the aesthetic and you just kind of want to focus on resources, then by all means, I guess a more common land is, I guess it doesn't matter. So we'll just keep moving on. The last thing I want to cover actually is Kodas, right? So Kodas are important mainly because they are more powerful than your Vessel or your Mara or Kodamara variants, right? And they can do all three things. They can enchant, they can farm, and they can hunt, right? So I did that backwards. They can farm resources, they can hunt the Shattered, and they can enchant. They can act as an enchanter, right? And they can supposedly do those things at a stronger level than, say, your Kodamaras. And there's only about 10,000 of them. So if you have one, by all means, utilize them as best you can. If you're looking to fight them, if you're looking to get on the leaderboard, I mean, you can take a look at my tier 1 build guide on how to, you know, get onto leaderboard with season 1. That might be useful to you. But otherwise, feel free to use them as you see fit. I think the other half of the 10,000 Kodas are still attached to the Otherdeed for Otherside and NFT collections. So these are the OGs that haven't been decoupled yet. But otherwise, you can find them in the NFT collection as well. So Kodas currently also have an advantage that if you start playing Legends of the Mara, you don't have to nest the Kodas. Unlike the Vessels, they don't have any, you know, hatching process. They can just start fighting the Shadow right away. So now we get to the last part, the valuation. You know, we've covered everything thus far on resources, artifact, rare resources, tiers, artifacts, sediment types, and lands, environment size, and type. But again, all this information can be found on Otherside Wiki. It's basically a community website that aggregates all major marketplaces in real time. And I personally think it's probably the best place. And I haven't seen anything like it in, you know, Gem or OpenSea Pro. It doesn't have this type of information. And as the game develops, as Legends of the Mara goes through Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, Season 4, so on and so forth, a lot of the wiki is going to turn into a Wikipedia style, like community-made, guides, events, pages and articles for finding the best build guides, finding how to craft items, etc., 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 buildings, armor, stuff like that, so on and so forth. But at the very core of it is picking your Otherdeed at the very beginning, right? So in terms of valuation, rare resources are probably the best attribute to take a look at value-wise within the Otherside, according to Geared Apes here. I'm just kind of reading verbatim. So tier 3 resource, Luminite, you can kind of see, hey, according to the wiki, you can kind of, sort by rarity. This is the 22nd rarest resource. We can see it here. And then artifacts are also important because we know that, they're limited in number and they provide special in-game benefits. Again, I kind of touched on, hey, artifacts can be really powerful, especially, if you equip them to Kodas, Kodamaras, and they're doing specific things for you that, you can't necessarily achieve without crafting them or, acquiring them in specific ways. We don't necessarily know what the use case of all these other artifacts will be. It seems like there are these familiars here, may or may not provide you buffs. It seems like there's potions as well, so that may or may not have an impact on gameplay. But yeah, they're pretty rare. They're going to impact the price of your land probably significantly because there's not that many of them. So don't be surprised if you see them going for more than like 5 ETH or some crazy stuff like that. But anyways, the next thing outside of artifacts, being really powerful is the sediment type and tier, right? Because sediment types and tiers provide you the raw fragment material resources that feed to, Maras that are going to be evolved over time to, help people fight the Shattered, farm, etc., etc. And it will also affect the look of people's Maras turning into Kodamaras. So that's also going to be a critical factor in like figuring out what you want your Kodamara to look like, right? Because, if you kind of want to wait and pick a good aesthetic, being able to pick a specific sediment that, appeals to what you like will be important. So outside of those main important things, environment size is also important because I guess it dictates your bandwidth, the amount of workers you can work with, but it's not as important as say, I don't know if it's as important as like resources, tiers, artifacts, or sediments, right? So it's honestly up to you how big you want your land to be. And then the last thing is the environment type, right? So environment type pertains to like what it is. Is it a bog? Is it a splinter? Is it a Veldin? Is it a sulfuric? Is it so on and so forth, right? I'm personally inclined to getting a sand one, or maybe a biolume one, or a crystal, or a luster, or even a sky or a mycelium. But again, it's up to you. Let your heart decide if you have an environment type preference. I'm not going to tell you what to buy or what not to buy. Again, you can figure out what's on floor. But otherwise, I'm sure as time goes on and we figure out what's good and what's bad, or maybe not necessarily bad, what's good and what's great in fighting the Shattered, we're gonna see the market change and shift, and it's gonna be awesome. It's really gonna be a great experience going forward. I'm particularly excited for the Otherside Wiki to grow and expand. I'm excited for Otherside to expand and Legends of the Mara to drop. And I hope this guide was useful to you for picking your first Otherdeed and figuring out what's valuable, what's not, and at least you have some more insight into pick, I guess, everything about Otherside. So again, you can find me in the Discord. Definitely like and subscribe if you found this video insightful or interesting. It definitely helps me create more content. If you like Otherside, so I know I certainly do. But again, hit me up in the Discord so you can always find me there. I'm gonna sign off, so I'll see you guys next time. Peace.